Well, sometimes to review, you must become a better reviewer than you were programmed to be. Hello, everyone. I'm some loudmouth on the internet with an opinion, and I'm here joined by the Dark Conservatarian. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. It was a pretty good overall weekend. I had like a men's retreat that was arranged by my church. Had a good old chat with my pastor just this afternoon, and yeah, it was a pretty good weekend, I'd say.
A- And we both saw the new DreamWorks animated movie, The Wild Robot. Eh,
Yep.
And it's a movie that's been getting massive amounts of critical acclaim from audiences. It seems to be doing pretty well at the box office, but it's not
Yeah.
really a massive hit.
And might I just punctuate on that point actually that even though that this movie is like a week behind as far as how early each movie was released, it still managed to like kind of kick Transformers One's butt a bit in the box office.
Yeah, I like Transformers 1 too, but I thought The Wild Robot was definitely the superior of the two movies.
Okay, I haven't bothered seeing the movie because I'm, for one, a little bit strapped on liquid money right now. So I thought I'd prioritize the one movie that I was theorizing in my head, at least I thought was going to do weaker of the two, that being the Wild Robot. But apparently I was theorizing wrong, and I couldn't be all the happier. But anyway, I still thought I would like to devote my money towards a project that I was more intrigued by, as opposed to something that, just going by the trailers, looked like just a whole bunch of boyish, man-childish, dumb
Well,
slop. That might have been fun, but
let's keep
still.
focusing on The Wild Robot rather than rather than Transformers 1. And I first saw the
Yeah.
trailer for The Wild Robot. I have not read the books it's based off, so that gives me a bit of limited perspective. The trailer came out 6 months ago, one that had very little dialogue, but featured a very interesting rendition of Louis Armstrong's "What a Wonderful World," sung by the movie star. And I had to say, well, I remember after that trailer came out, that may be one of the best movie trailers I've ever seen. And I'm like, and immediately after, I'm like, oh, and I noticed it was by Chris Sanders, the director of Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. And I'm like, this could turn out to be an absolute banger.
Yeah.
And having seen the final movie, I can safely say it was an absolute banger. It may be my favorite movie of 2024 so far.
Is it your favorite DreamWorks movie, though?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, I kind of am of the opinion that um, definitely, I don't know. In my personal opinion, I think Shreks 1, 2, and 4 were like story in the stronger in the story area, and Kung Fu Panda 2 as well, and Prince of Egypt. But it was still a very good movie. Like, the best part of it is probably the visual aesthetic of it all. We all know about Spider Verse and how that they were like experimenting with the realm of CG animation for movies. They gave like an almost 2D ish kind of look with their CG animation to where it almost looked like a 2D comic book. In my personal opinion, it was a little bit harsher on the eyes, but still, it was good looking overall. And then Puss in Boots: The Last Wish came out, which kind of copied a little bit of that same formula, except dialed down a little bit on the harshness on the eyes, and it looks a little bit more watercolor painting ish. But the Wild Robot takes it a step even further, and now it just even more so looks like a beautiful watercolor painting just like plastered on a 3D CG model, and it just looks real beautiful in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought the animation aesthetic worked well because it's based on a series of children's books. So it kind of makes sense that it would have the painted quality of a children's book.
As opposed to movies like Trolls 3 and Ruby Gillman, just by looking at the trailers, looks like that they are sticking more with what DreamWorks has done throughout most of their CG
Yeah, but
animated
those
career,
are
which
kind
is
of
that realistic CG animation.
DreamWorks as a studio has kind of been consistently inconsistent. Every so often, they produce some absolute bangers, and they also produce a lot of crap. That
Yeah.
movies like Trolls 2 or Ruby Gillman, um, I guess are okay for the as electronic babysitters, but I don't think anyone above the age of 10 could really stand watching them for too long.
Yeah, Schaefer's production and his review of the Wild Robot, he was all like, "Oh yeah, everybody is all like, DreamWorks is back," but really, no, DreamWorks has never been gone. Even they've always and will always be known for having like 3 subpar or even outright crappy movies, and then one absolute masterpiece out of every 3 or 4 movies that they release.
Right. The Wild Robot might well be in one of my top 5 of DreamWorks animated movies.
Really?
I probably I would definitely not rank it above The Prince of Egypt, which is still to this day probably always will be my favorite DreamWorks movie. And
Me too.
The director's last work, well, no, actually, The Croods was also made by Sanders, but one of his biggest projects, probably his biggest project he made for DreamWorks, was the original How to Train Your Dragon. And I also kind of think that may slightly best The Wild Robot. Both they kind of have a theme about kind of seeing beyond what things appear. Like all the How to Train Your Dragon series, look at everything that happens because one boy made the decision not to take a life but to spare one, took pity on something, and saw this creature who all his life was just told is a monster that should be killed on sight, that will always go for the kill, and he sees something more in it, and as a result, he brings peace to his society. He shows his people that dragons are not just monsters; they're animals that can be trained and can be molded into friends if they're treated well. There's a great message there about seeing beyond what things appear to be, and that message is kind of carried over into the Wild Robot.
Yeah. That was a good story element, though I do personally, you rank it somewhere in the top 5. I do not know if it ranks that high to me because there are some more nitpicks that I have with it. Like, I guess for starters, you go talking about how that the first few trailers that they were absolutely dialogueless.
Pretty much only the first trailer was.
Well, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, I guess you're right. I just don't remember that clearly.
The whole aspect of the robot being able to like use AI to like decipher the language of the animals, that was always an aspect from the original books, from what I hear. And another thing that's interesting about that is it's not that far fetched because some scientists have been using AI to try to like decipher the language of animals. People have been using AI on elephant infrasound as well as whale calls to try to decipher greater meaning from the sounds of animals.
Yeah. The thing that I was going to mention though, after the first trailer of where that it was all silent and then they showed like the animals actually talking, I will admit that I had a little bit of my concerns that this was going to be like one of those typical annoying celebrity casted animals doing a poop and pee type of humor and all that kind of stuff. And well, I'm certainly glad after watching this that they did not lean into that as much as they potentially could have, like Illuminations or Blue Sky Studios would have. But I will say that there was at least one character that did kind of annoy me, and that was Fink the Fox, especially in his first introduction in the movie.
Right.
He was kind of a dollar store version of Nick Wilde, I thought.
There's definitely similarities in the characters, kind of the sly fox stereotype, both kind of embody that. But there's an effort in the Wild Robot, even though the animals obviously are highly anthropomorphized, to like try to represent that the wild is a pretty awful place at times, and death is always looming over the shoulder of every single animal. I mean, very few wild animals ever live their full natural lifespan because something's always out to eat them. There's so many things that can go wrong in the wild. Life and death is always hanging by a thread for them, and that's kind of something that a theme that the Wild Robot deals with very well. Like and sometimes makes kind of dark humor on it. Like there's a scene where the the possum is with her 7 Joeys, and she says that she's a mother of 7, and then here's like a scream and says 6.
I kind of like of how that the possum mom was just kind of an embodiment of a slightly cynical, slightly overweight homeschool mom with multiple children.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that she was like featured in the movie a little bit more, but I guess ultimately she serviced in the only way that she really needed to story wise. Another character that I liked for the scenes that he was in, at least anyways, was the one leader goose named Longneck, which made me go thinking of the nickname for brontosauruses from Land Before Time.
I mean, they are both dinosaurs, so yeah.
I will say that his introduction was very rough, in my opinion, though, because they did the one movie sin of telling instead of showing. Like they just say in dialogue between Roz and Longneck that you were always respectable to me and Brightbill, and I was like, wait, what? Was there any earlier scene that we saw in this movie of where this guy showed up and was actually respectable out of all the animals to them? I don't think I saw that. So yeah, they did a tell instead of showing kind of thing with him, and that just slightly annoyed me.
Yeah, I actually kind of liked his character. Bill Knightley ended up voicing him, and I actually thought he brought a lot of dignity to the character.
Yeah.
And the thing about this movie, Roz, voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, is her how's her last name spelled? Nyong'o, that actress from 12 Years a Slave.
Lupita Nyong'o.
Lupita
Nyong'o.
Yeah, I thought she really did a fantastic job as the character, and I like the idea that through kind of a machine interacting with its environment and kind of rewriting its code to adapt, kind of really helps her develop kind of more of a personality, a soul,
Yeah.
if you will. Because one of the main things when they train AIs is that's worth noting is they feed vast amounts of data from the internet into these things, which gets them to be able to do things that are pretty miraculous compared to what they could do only a few years ago, but feeding vast amounts of data. But these AIs kind of just exist in cyberspace and don't really get to physically interact with the real world. Hence why they seem to make weird mistakes that shows they don't understand the laws of physics. Whereas Roz,
Right.
obviously, who's stranded out in the wilderness, she kind of has to figure out and understand the real world in the way that like a human would, like a human toddler, but it's still kind of following her base programming, where she's programmed to kind of help people with tasks because she's a unit that's designed to like take care of people's homes or what have you.
Yeah. I liked Roz the robot. I likened her to a lot of Eve in my own like short video review of the movie, and I did I take back one thing that I said in that video, and I said that she was like a watered down version of Eve, but really, I think she's actually Eve from WALL-E, but executed better, in my personal opinion.
I'd definitely say so.
Whereas Fink was just a watered down version of Nick Wilde from Zootopia. I still stand by that opinion.
And of course, kind of being given the task of being this mother for this orphan gooseling is kind of her kind of seen originally just kind of as a task for her to complete like a robot, but over time it kind of develops into more than that. And Brightbill kind of as he grows up and realizes his circumstance that the robot who's been raising him did accidentally cause the death of his original family, which is a pretty dark thing to find out. And the fact that it was all just machine learning, and he's just like, "Do you even feel anything?"
Yeah, and I actually
got a machine.
I actually got 2 points to bring up on that. One, I really like I complained about one thing that they did of telling instead of showing, but one thing after the introduction of Longneck and when the migration actually happens, I really like the fact that they so well executed show don't tell, with Roz finally coming to the epiphany of developing emotions, of where that she's just like kind of quivering a bit in her blinky eyes as she has Brightbill like leaving her, and then she just has her eyebrows, if you can even call it, or eyelids, whatever, just furrowed upward, to where that you can see the sadness in her face, as
Well,
opposed
it
to
is
that being
possible
overly
that
explained.
those who designed her did want her to be able to show emotions because that makes her more palpable as a product to whoever she was sold to.
Possible, but the thing is that if there was any showing of emotion within the programming before that moment, it was more artificial. Whereas in that moment with the migration scene, I could see a more natural, well, for lack of better wording, natural kind of emotion being developed just by the looks of her face and so forth.
Well,
Um,
one thing about this movie is I was kind of expecting a bit more revolutions on where Roz came from, and the way this future works in the Wild Robot is kind of intentionally kept kind of vague. Like we see that apparently the sea levels have risen, so that part of the Golden Gate Bridge is underwater. So this is kind of like a future where climate change has warmed the planet's temperature. Yet it's not really a post-apocalyptic future because we see like this
yeah,
incredibly sterile, incredibly advanced city. And even though there are no
yeah.
human characters, we do see humans still exist. So it's not like a world where machines have like risen up and killed all humans.
Yeah, at first I thought by looking at the trailers, that's what I thought it was going to be about. I thought it was going to be some kind of post-apocalyptic world of where that Roz was some hundreds upon hundreds of years old robot finally woken up out from her crate, and she was going to come to find the true history behind humanity, and maybe the villains was going to be some aliens from outer space coming back to Earth or something. But no, it was like the humans still exist, and they're the ones who send the actual villain robot, which, in my opinion, was kind of the weakest or one of the weaker villains of all DreamWorks catalog.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't think the villain was particularly strong. The villain would have looked better if she were less emotional, or it was less emotional, because then it would have it kind
Yeah.
of had the ruthlessness of an unfeeling machine. But instead, they gave it kind of a wacky personality, which didn't really work for a villain.
Yeah, gave her that sort of forced smile, overly panned, like smiling and nervous laughter and voice that you would hear from a a female
Which,
tech
which
call
which
representative.
is bizarre because why would you want to program those kind of qualities into an AI that's designed to retrieve stuff? It seems to be very counterproductive to make your AI that's designed as a retrieval unit to sound as sinister as possible in
I don't
order
know.
to make want
Maybe
to
in
run
this
away from you.
maybe in this world it's a alternate futuristic timeline of where that type of personality is actually more loved than hated, like in our current modern world.
Right, and that
That'd be
and
ironic.
and another aspect that kind of didn't work was the whole idea that a winter storm would come that's so bad that if Roz didn't heroically save all these animals, that they would have all survived the winter. These animals
You
have
mean would not
survived
survive it?
for for millions of years, cold winters. Why on earth was this winter supposedly so bad that it would have killed everyone without Roz's intervention? Why? I was kind of hoping there'd be an explanation for that. Like, was this some kind of result of a weird climate shift in the planet in this future, or something?
A new
But
ice age,
it's not
maybe.
really explained.
A new ice age, maybe. Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, that is another slight plot hole. I mean, especially if they are basing all these animals off of real life animals, which obviously is obvious they are. Um, I also wanted to like, I know this is a bit of a rewind, but I wanted to like note on the whole global warming, climate change, and the mild bit of anti-corporatist messaging. Like it just, it feels a little bit refreshing to actually see a movie like. Back in my childhood, I probably would have been a little bit more annoyed than appreciative of the execution of the kind of at least center left ish messaging that being a global warming happened, and so therefore half the world is underwater. Um, and corporations are bad or evil, sort of thing. But whereas this movie, it actually took it in a very subtle kind of way. It just feels like a rather refreshing callback to like 90s or 80s era of liberal Hollywood messaging, you know?
Right. Well, ultimately, maybe it treats the state of the world mysteriously because it really doesn't matter for the main story of this movie, which is
Yeah,
ultimately about
yeah.
the connection and the kind of feelings of parenthood between Roz and this Gosling Brightbert that she raises. Ultimately, it's kind of a mother son story and that's the main crux of this movie. Everything else is just kind of a backdrop.
Yeah, and since you uh, take it back to that subject, there was one thing that kind of did not set well with me, and that was the early front loading of the breakup scene. Like, I guess I'm kind of appreciative in the same way that Shea Furlow's production is, in that they did not do the stereotypical third act breakup like a lot of animated movies will do. But at the same time, the fact that they had it done so early in like the bare end of the first act or the bare beginning of the second act, however that you want to look at it, it seemed like rather, it felt kind of rushed and not very well built up, in my opinion. When Bright Bill is like lashing out at Roz and is like, "Oh, okay, we're doing this soon in the movie now."
Well,
Okay,
it kind of made sense though after interacting with his own kind and realizing how different he was. He kind of would be oblivious throughout most of his childhood. I mean, as they do in real life, he just imprinted on Roz because she was the first thing he saw when he hatched. So that's how Goslings work. If they imprint on the first thing they see, and they just kind of follow it around.
hmm.
A lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people have raised geese, and if they're the first thing that they see, they'll often just the geese will follow them well into adulthood. This guy
Sweet.
with this flock of geese that he raised since they were chicks, and he was plowing with the boat, and you can see them flying alongside to keep up, like right alongside the boat to keep up with them.
Yeah. And I gotta say, like, before that, I actually went and saw this movie. I was talking about it with my grandparents, and at first I thought that it was a duck, and I did not realize until like actually watching the movie that it's a baby goose. But still, the way that I sold it to my grandparents is that it's a movie about a robot that is forced to raise a duck as her own kid, and I thought that it was pretty sweet and kind of funny in a sort of way, charmingly funny, not funny in
Yeah,
it like, oh,
well,
that's
kind of after
stupid.
interacting with other members of his own kind, realizing how different he is, and realizing the disturbing more origins of how he became raised by a robot. It is very understandable that that would lead to a whole lot of anger. I could have been
Ultimately,
raised by my family, but because were you were careless and you accidentally killed my family, now I'm kind of an outcast and a freak.
ultimately, it is definitely one of the more wholesome and family oriented type of movies as opposed to anything in the Shrek franchise or even the Kung Fu Panda franchise, which those movies are like at least somewhat family friendly, but they have a whole lot of adult humor in it too that maybe the kids will not explicitly get off the bat, but you can tell that in those franchises kind of meant for adult men to enjoy, whereas
Yeah,
this movie
yeah,
is
definitely.
definitely more
But
family
at the
oriented.
same time, though, like the Shrek movies over time, that start Shrek as as the single guy who kind of lives a bachelor life, and over the course of 4 movies, comes to have a family of his own, and the last movie in particular is all about him really learning to appreciate his family.
Yeah. And
But so I guess there's a kind of a pro family message here. And here in the Wild Robot, although it doesn't have the potty humor of Shrek, but some of the scenes, particularly early on, are pretty dark, kind of showing that nature can be incredibly cruel, and there are scenes
yeah.
in the Wild Robot that represent the cruelty of nature.
Yeah, I also on that note actually, I also like of how that they did not completely subvert the nature of nature by saying explicitly at the end of the movie, oh, we will all now go vegetarian or some preachy shit like that. I mean, yeah, there is the Mark Hamill bear that goes saying at the end, tomorrow that I am going to chase you again, right? And Fink is just kind of scared and he's all like, just kidding. um I mean, I know that he says just kidding right there, but I think that there might be an implication still that the bear ultimately either he's making an exception to Fink, or there is going to be some much later date, like months on down the road, where he will start chasing Fink
Well,
again, trying
which
to
it,
eat him
though
or
it
something.
does say why this movie is ultimately a fantasy movie, not a science fiction movie. It's a fantasy movie with sci-fi elements. Because although scientists can't possibly use AI to like better understand the language of animals, animals do not have the ability to reason and rationalize things to survive the way that they do in this movie. If you actually got a bunch of animals, well, it wouldn't just be like temporary pandemonium. You talk and you'd be able to reason with them and get them to calm down. No, they'd all fucking kill each other.
Yeah, let's get around the campfire and sing "Kumbaya, my lord," and all
No,
that
that's
stuff.
not. That ain't how animals work. Okay, they ultimately follow their own instincts, and animals don't really have the ability to really moralize their own actions. This is kind.
Yeah.
Well, for example, there's a reason why, like, if your dog makes a mess, you pretty much have to discipline the dog immediately after it does the action, or there's no point. Because if you just get angry at your dog later, your dog really won't understand why, because dogs don't really have the ability to moralize their own actions. They understand that their masters don't like it when they do this, but like it when I do this, but they can't really understand why. And humans don't even develop that ability till about around age 4. And of course, dogs and pretty much all other animals never really develop greater moral reasoning than a human 4-year-old.
Yeah, and I guess on the point of like pro nature messaging, but it doesn't completely go in the extremist like vegan route or anything like that. It kind of makes me think of Guardians. I don't mean this to be like a subject change, but it kind of reminds me of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 as well, where that movie had an anti-animal cruelty message, but it still at the end of the day wasn't trying to be like pro-veganism, because at the beginning of the movie you saw the Guardians, they were grabbing these street food items. They looked like that there was some kind of rodent on a stick kind of thing, and they're just eating as they're walking down the road and just chatting along.
I mean, you're not gonna have bobcats and foxes. You're not gonna convince them to go vegan. That's just reality. You know, these animals eat meat.
Yeah.
That's these animals are obligate carnivores that need meat to survive.
And speaking of family-friendly movies about migration, have you ever seen Illuminations Migration?
No, and I don't really have much desire to.
I don't really either. I mean, I've heard like comparisons made of this movie to Migration, although Shea he says that it looks stupid just from the outside looking in. Although I will say that aside from the inclusion of the obnoxious voice of Aquafina, Migration seems like that it would be like an ultimately harmless kids movies, harmless in comparison to any Minions crap, at least, anyways. But it's just nothing that I would want to go out of my way to watch, unless I was babysitting my nieces.
I did watch Minions: Rise of Gru, and I genuinely couldn't stand it. It was a bunch of annoying noises. I understand it's a kids movie and the story's going to be silly, but this movie's just constantly bouncing around and making obnoxious noises. It feels less like it's like you're babysitting a 4-year-old who doesn't want to shut the fuck up and thus wants to do everything he can to disturb you. It feels like a 4-year-old kid is banging pots and pans in your ears. That's what watching Minions: Rise of Gru is like.
And this is kind of I kind of thought about this a little bit earlier. At least Migration, at least from the outside looking in, anyways, not seeing the movie, at least it is not like bad for kids' development of where that they're making a whole bunch of incoherent babble in the same
way. If we haven't watched the movie, so we're not here to talk about Migration. We're here to talk about the wild robot.
Oh yeah, just talking about movies in general, but Wild Robot.
The Migration, though, was just kind of a metaphor for kids leaving the nest, growing up and watching the child you've raised fly away, and become an adult.
Yeah.
And it's kind of about how motherhood or parenthood kind of like leads to really helps us discover more of our humanity and become more than we were programmed to be.
Yeah. And I guess there's like a little bit more of an at messaging in the Wild Robot for like for it to be analogous to a kid leaving their parents, whereas the migration movie would be more like if the entire family was to move to a completely new house
Yeah, but we're not
together.
talking about the migration movie. And but in comparison to Chris Sandler's earlier movies, there was you can also see themes similar to Lilo and Stitch in the fact that Stitch is programmed to be a monster at the beginning of the story. He's like he's basically was created for ill-described reasons, but by Jumba to try to be some kind of weapon of war or like destructive weapon, but kind of due to the kindness of Lilo and her sister, kind of learns to develop more than that and become a good person.
Yeah,
you could kind of see something similar. The message: we are what we choose.
Didn't he co-direct Lilo and Stitch with somebody?
No, I believe he directed it solely, but he worked on earlier Disney movies. He was like involved in like the Disney Renaissance, but I don't think he was a director of any of them. But
okay.
What's also interesting about Lilo and Stitch is it was one of the few movies that was finished under budget, which is why they made those cute little sequences with Stitch and other older Disney movies. Because they had couple $1 million left over and they didn't know what to do with it. And also the end sequence of it, the ships originally took place in a city, but it was changed with the spaceships flying between the city. It was changed at the last minute due to the 9/11 attacks.
You're referring to Lilo and Stitch?
Yeah, because originally, you remember the scene where they're basically trying to rescue Lilo from Gantu's ship. Originally, that was them flying between like city streets, but it was changed to being more outdoors because it reminded people, because planes flying between city streets reminded people of 9/11.
I see.
And it was animated like it was being animated as 9/11 happened.
I mean, which is more 9/11-esque, a rescue scene in Lilo and Stitch taking place in the middle of a city street, or in The Wild Robot, some big defense robot actually shooting down a whole bunch of geese only to be damaging like humans' own property, aka the giant ass greenhouse.
Yeah, but 22 years later, I guess people have calmed down on that shit.
Which that kind of annoyed me, actually. I was thinking to myself, why are you doing this, defense robot? You're causing more harm than you are good by like shooting randomly at the geese only to be shooting the walls of your greenhouse you're supposed to be defending.
Well, ironically, actually, they're using artificial intelligence so that fewer geese or birds get killed. I was watching Nova the other day and says they have an artificial intelligence system that basically turns off wind turbines if like geese or eagles are too close, because they've been having a problem in the fact that sometimes migrating birds would get caught in them and the turbines would grind them up. So in order to make that happen a lot less, they're using artificial intelligence to try to prevent.
This is some documentary you watched?
Caught up in them.
Huh? This is some documentary you watched?
Yeah, I was on Nova.
Oh, on
Nova documentary about eagles.
Okay, I see. I gotta say, like, some cool side characters. Talking more about the Wild Robot, I really like the beaver and even the Mark Hamill bear. Not to mention the one owl that is a tutor to Bright Bill. Some cool side
owl?
characters.
I thought it was a falcon.
I don't remember. I mean, looked kind of almost owl-ish. It might have been a falcon, actually, now I think about it.
Right.
See if I can like Google this up very quickly.
Yeah, forget exactly. Oh, let me look at Thunderbolt. Yep, was a peregrine falcon.
Okay, my bad. I just remember a square head. So the box office of Wild Robot is just past 100 million right now. It is very well on its track to turning a tidy profit.
Yeah, it likely is, but at the same time, the Despicable Me 4 made over 900 million, and I'm wondering why do so many parents seem to really hate their children?
I don't know.
Because I'd say taking your kids to see Despicable Me 4 should get you a visit by CPS.
Oh wait.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You took your children to mind-numbing numbing trash. Well, why'd you do it? Because I want my kids to grow up to be a fucking idiot.
Wow, talk about idiocracy. And speaking
I
of,
mean, I'm
box
joking there,
office
but
turnouts,
seriously, it is depressing that Illumination's crap keeps doing so well when movies like The Wild Robot are obviously far, far superior and far more meaningful movies.
speaking of box office returns, Transformers 1 as of right now is just 97 million. So it's looking like it's on track to make back its money both in production and marketing budget, but Wild Robot is definitely beating it by a safe margin.
I saw Transformers 1, and I'd say overall, I'd give that one like a 7 out of 10. It
Really?
it respected the lore of the Transformers that have been built up over the 40 years of the franchise, and this is a movie I kind of wanted, one that was an animated movie set on Cybertron with no human characters whatsoever, and that kind of shows their origins. But if I had some problems with it, it's for one, some of the celebrity voice actors that didn't work. Like Chris Hemsworth was not a good Optimus Prime. Why didn't you bring back Peter Cullen?
Because they're trying to portray a young Optimus Prime, I guess.
I don't think anyone other than Peter Cullen should voice Optimus Prime as long as he's alive.
Okay.
That's just my view. And the end moral dilemma was kind of stupid. I can't stand a moral dilemma at the end of the movie. Oh, we can't execute the bad guy who's done all these horrible things because if we kill him, it'll make us as bad as he is. No, fuck off. All right, he deserved it.
So just to be stupidly clear, I guess we're pretty much done talking about Wild Robot.
No. And we have more about the Wild Robot.
I don't know if I personally have anything more to talk about it.
And
Did you?
The Wild what other aspect of this movie did I want to talk about? About how this world works. You see, whales are still apparently around in this future. So, where is this island exactly? I assume it's maybe in the Pacific Northwest, as that's where all the animal life all seems to resemble animals from like Canada or like Western United States.
Yeah,
you see a grizzly bear, you see a lynx, you see a fox, obviously, geese, a moose. Yeah, all animals that live in the Western United States, like Southern Canada.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a neat world. There was the possibility floated about of a sequel being made because apparently it was a trilogy of books that was the source material of this movie, and they kind of condensed a lot of elements from the second one and the first one all into this one movie. Honestly,
yeah,
I don't
that
know
might
if
have been a mistake. I think they should probably have adapted each of them just as as an animated movie, so they could do a trilogy.
Yeah, maybe. Although I don't know if of how sequel worthy the Wild Robot is. I almost feel like that the Wild Robot would stand stronger as its own standalone movie. Personally,
I mean, it does work fine as a standalone movie. It's a really, really good one. But I do think there are room for expanding this world, so I definitely would not be opposed to a sequel. Doesn't seem like it's going to do what Joker 2 is doing, at least according to a lot of people who've seen it, saying that shit's all over the first movie. That basically that the whole movie's a middle finger to everyone who liked the first one.
yeah. Speaking of movies that should have just been its own standalone thing,
Oh yeah, Joker, yeah, which I haven't seen yet. I might see it maybe next week. We'll do a review stream on that one.
Of course, I haven't seen Joker 2, and
yeah,
I don't know if I will because, like I said, trying to save up money right now. Plus, I'm busy throughout a good chunk of the rest of October.
Right.
But if you're able to like get ShareView on and do a review of both that and Alien Romulus, that'd be cool for you.
Yeah, I promised him I would, but I never ended up making it because this and that kept coming up.
Right.
But which is kind of Alien Romulus though was actually pretty good. That's one I'll briefly talk about that one. I guess it's it might be the best of the Alien franchise since Aliens, but honestly, given some of the lows that have come over the last 35 years, that's really not that high a praise.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. I haven't watched his full review, and honestly, I think that the guy just likes to have his own farts just a little bit too much. Mahler did a video, full review of Alien Romulus, calling it an unbridled parasite. So I get the implication that he apparently dislikes the movie pretty strongly.
Well, the worst aspect of it are kind of like attempts at fan service. It does it, which really annoyed me that so many modern movies like to just put a little winks at previous entries for fan service. But honestly, it usually just makes the movie worse. I mean, why not just have your movie stand on its own instead of trying to be nostalgic about like an older movie? Hey, remember that older movie you liked? Remember it? How awesome! Yeah. I remember.
Yeah. Get away from her, you bitch.
Yeah.
Is that really like something that they did? Is that they had a guy saying "get away from her, you bitch," but did it a whole lot weaker than Sigourney Weaver did?
Yeah, and I thought that was one of the dumber moments of the movie, to be honest. That's the thing, though. I overall liked the movie. I thought it was actually, on its own, a pretty solid entry, but some of the fan service, which feel like studio-mandated shit, was kind of cringe.
Wasn't there something... I mean, don't be afraid to, like, spoil it for me, because I probably will not care to ever watch it. But isn't it true, like, at the end of the movie that one of the human characters, like, injects some of the black goo in themselves so that they could have this new kind of alien eject out of their chest to defeat some other badder alien that they're trying to fight off or something?
Yeah, it brings back the whole, like, goo shit from the Prometheus movies. So it claims that it ignored the Prometheus movies and went back to, like, just the original series are not true. Ridley Scott was still involved in Alien Romulus, and he still incorporates some of the weird mythology he invented in the Prometheus movies.
Yeah,
that is still there.
When you say Prometheus movies, are you referring to Alien Covenant being a sequel to Prometheus?
Yeah, the Prometheus and Alien Covenant, the kind of like the two Prometheus movies, essentially.
Okay.
The two Alien prequel movies that Ridley Scott made. Whereas Alien Romulus, it's set actually after the original Alien, but before Aliens. But which is also kind of dumb because we're believed that that's a piece of the Nostromo. Bullshit. If you watch the end of the original Alien, the Nostromo was vaporized. There'd be nothing that survived it. But we're to believe that like some chunk of alien DNA survived on some wreckage. Bullshit. Rewatch it again. It was new Ted Dust.
Man, same thing about J.J. Abrams and Episode 9 of Star Wars. Dude, the second Death Star was completely vaporized. There was not going to be some big old chunk just falling on... I don't even know what planet it was. I don't think that planet was Endor, but we're kind of getting off track.
Yeah, but even then, because even then, though, even if a chunk of it did survive, it would take thousands of years for it to travel to another star system. Because I don't think they had a hyperdrive up to space debris.
Yeah.
And without a hyperdrive, it takes normal space objects thousands of years to travel between star systems.
Instead of it being on the moon of Endor, it's on a completely different planet, apparently, for some dumbass reason. Yeah. J.J. Abrams, you dumb hack.
Because J.J. Abrams is a hack. Same dumb space magic that the reason why everyone in the galaxy could see that planet being blown up in The Force Awakens in the sky, even though logically that would be so far away, vast majority of the galaxy wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah.
If a planet was blown up in the nearest star system to us, we wouldn't see it. It's too far away.
Yeah.
But
But
back to the Wild Robot. And I guess you could view the Wild Robots world as one where humans are still allowed to exist, but AI kind of just peacefully runs society. So it's almost like Sam Altman's Dream Society in some ways.
do they really run society? I thought humans ultimately managed a lot, if not all of it.
It's almost like Wall-E, where humans kind of are there, but robots just do everything for them.
Right,
And
they do a lot of the manual labor, but I don't think they're the managers of everything, like a governor or something.
Maybe, like I said, it's intentionally kept vague, but generally, like these AI tech bros, when they talk about building on artificial general intelligence, they think it will like start serving society. Because theoretically, if somebody makes a true artificial general intelligence, there really wouldn't be anything it couldn't do, anything that humans can do that it couldn't. So it would pretty much run society. Would that be for a good thing? Would it like take care of us, or would it decide to hate us and go postal? Is kind of unknown, and as I've said before, in my opinion, not worth the risk to find out.
Yeah. What's your favorite joke of the whole movie?
Favorite joke? I don't know, that dark joke about which is like I'm a mother of 6 was that was pretty dark and funny.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Most marsupial joeys don't reach adulthood. It's very uncommon.
Oh, yeah.
Only like 1 out of every like 10.
I guess ultimately overall, it's one of the lesser funny movies of DreamWorks catalog. A movie studio that is known for generally having some kind of even for its more subpar movies, has some pretty hysterical humor. I don't know. What do you think of that opinion?
Maybe, but ultimately the movie's not strictly a comedy. It it's a story. It's kind of like a
Right.
storybook's mother and son story, but with occasional jokes in there as comic relief.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it a comedy.
Oh, I wouldn't think so either. I mean, it's definitely not on the comedic level of Kung Fu Panda or Shrek,
Right.
or even like Prince of Egypt, for that matter. Which Prince of Egypt did not have necessarily crude humor, but still a whole lot of wit and banter at each other's characters' expense.
Right. Yeah. Even though that had the darkest drama of any DreamWorks movie as well, man.
Yep.
It goes to dark places no other DreamWorks movie ever went to.
What do you think is like very quickly? What do you think is DreamWorks' worst movie?
DreamWorks worst movie. Uh
Keep in mind that I haven't seen like little less than half of their entire catalog, so I wouldn't be able to judge that.
Shark Tale was up there because it featured a very unlikable main character, which kind of will nuke the whole movie.
What about
Also,
Turbo?
the Trolls sequels, they were all pretty insufferable. I saw the first Troll that I didn't care for it. Also, that also be up there as their worst.
What about Turbo?
Turbo was I don't know if I would call it their worst, but it's not very good.
I
Like a
just
5 out
remember
of 10
watching
movie
it
at best.
and thinking it was pretty bland. Apparently, Shea Frillas thinks it's the absolute worst DreamWorks movie, with Shrek the
I
Third
don't know
being.
if I'd say it's the worst, but it's definitely not that good.
I'd say that Shrek the Third is probably way far down there on my list, mostly because of how much of a soul sucking experience it is, and such a slog to get through that it is. It's one of them.
I don't think Shrek the Third is that bad. Yeah, it's the worst of the Shrek movies easily, but is it like real? It has a few like good laughs.
Yeah, and it's just ultimately because of that why I thought that it was just kind of boring to watch. And honestly, I have like the quadrilogy set of all four Shrek movies, and I'm just not getting to Shrek the Third anytime soon. I've seen like the first and second one ever since getting this quadrilogy set, and the fourth one, but not the third though.
Yeah. There. Yeah,
I just
I
don't
think
care
it's
about it.
fine. Well, what would be another DreamWorks movie that wasn't that good?
Mm,
I'm trying to think.
maybe Sinbad.
Sinbad was no. Sinbad is decent. No.
Sinbad was okay. It's just I thought that the ending was kind of weak. It just felt kind of anticlimactic at the end of the movie.
Oh wait, Home. I forgot about Home. Home might be the worst.
It had like a I hear there being some joke of where that the main Bazinga alien just drinks pee and eats a urinal cake.
No, Boss Baby 2. No, sorry, that's my pick for worst DreamWorks animated movie. Boss Baby 2, absolutely.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, because that movie, not only was it fucking annoying, it has this one scene where I felt like this movie was giving me the finger. Okay, there's this one dumb scene where there's like all this comedic mayhem. Okay, where they're driving around and they go to a movie theater within the movie. Somebody is watching Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron on the movie screen, and the main characters crash through the screen. And I'm like, that scene really felt like this movie just gave me the fucking finger. Like, it's like, hey, DreamWorks is like, hey, remember when we used to make good animated movies? Well, fuck you.
That is an apt description for that scene right there. I haven't seen Boss Baby 2, but the way you describe it, it just sounds, just by the sounds of it, just sounds accurate.
Yeah, because I'm like, that's how I felt. I was standing there like, did this movie just give me the finger?
Yeah, I haven't seen the second one. I've seen the first one though, and I kind of liken the first Boss Baby to being almost about as bad as the Minions movie, or just from what bits and pieces I've seen of both appropriate movies. And honestly,
the first Boss Baby in its first 2/3 actually had some good humor, but in the last third, it just completely goes off the rails.
I will say that one of my sisters, who is like very uncritical of movies, even she did not like the first Boss Baby, and she made the comment that even in a bad movie, I still feel my heartstrings tugged at whenever I hear a baby cry, and referring to like in the third act of where that you have like an actual baby crying audio for when that the Boss Baby goes fully into baby mode, and the older brother has to sing to comfort him and get him to come to him, or however exactly that scene goes. I don't care.
Well, the one joke that I found hilarious in the first Boss Baby, which is why I do give the movie a little bit of credit, was one where they visit the baby making factory where babies come from, and he's like, "Wow, so this is where babies come from." And he's like, "Sure, where do you think babies came from?" and it's and he's and his older brother's like, "Well, my friend told me he whispered something in the baby's ear," and it's like, "What? No, ooh, that's sick." Okay, that's pretty damn funny, actually.
Yep, and definitely in line with DreamWorks crude humor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was actually a really a clever bit of adult humor. I actually really liked.
Yeah.
But Boss Baby overall is not a good movie, and the second one is much worse than the first one.
I guess a movie that I have more particularly strong feelings against, as opposed to other movies that might just be, objectively speaking, worse than it, would have to be Kung Fu Panda 3. I mean, granted, I've kind of fell asleep at multiple points of that movie, but I was just annoyed by, one, how weak the villain was, just not as intimidating or compelling or as investable as Tai Lung or Lord Shen, and not to mention the Panda Village scene was just very cringy and weird. I just could not stand it. And
I kind of
not to mention,
how I rank the Kung Fu Panda movies is I'd give 8 out of 10 to the first two, 7 out of 10 to the third one, and then 5 out of 10 to the fourth one.
I would give like a 9 out of 10 for the second one personally. The first one probably pretty similar. they're both strong in their own rights, and where that the first one gave more my man Shifu time to shine, and most time to shine for Oogway as well. Although I guess he comes back again in Kung Fu Panda 3 in all fairness, but still, Kung Fu Panda 1, Shifu and Oogway, and Tai Lung and the conflict between him and Shifu, that gets its biggest time to shine. And the Kung Fu fight scenes might be just a edge out a little bit more than Kung Fu Panda 2. But Kung Fu Panda 2, I just like the emotional climax of freaking Po a lot better in that movie. I also like the camaraderie between Po and the Furious Five the most. Like the first one just felt a little bit too mean spirited. Like if I was watching like a bunch of South Park characters just being mean for the sake of being mean, almost.
Yeah, but they learned to
being
respect him at the end. By the end of the movie, though.
Yeah. But in the Kung Fu Panda 2, we get to actually see that respect shine a bit, and just to see the kind of almost brother sister yin and yang relationship between Po and Tigress in that movie, where that he's kind of this eccentric weirdo compared to her straight-laced, straight woman kind of character.
The fourth movie was definitely the worst of the franchise for multiple reasons. Probably the biggest: stop casting Awkwafina. Yeah. I am so goddamn sick of her annoying ass voice in every animated movie. Goddamn.
I got like one other movie to talk about as far as Awkwafina goes, but another thing that annoyed me about Kung Fu Panda 3 though was how I felt like that they kind of softened up Shifu's character a bit too much. Like I would think that like he just smiled way too much. Even in Kung Fu Panda 2, when he got over some of his emotional turmoil as far as Tai Lung goes and all that stuff goes, he was still like at the end of the day a slightly cynical, kind of grumpy bastard. But by the third one, he's just this overly like jolly, cheerful, always smiling kind of character. And I was like, that's not my Shifu.
Well, he's grown over the course of the movie, so I didn't really mind that too much.
I don't know, just felt too Santa Claus-esque.
Like the biggest problem, but in the fourth one, several things annoyed me. Awkwafina being a big one, plus the whole thing that they say that you have to pick a successor. I'm like, why? Why the fuck does he have to pick a successor? It's kind of just, you have to do it. Why?
I mean, he's still pretty young. I mean, obviously Jack Black is like in his 50s, but if we were to like take the Kung Fu Panda movies in some kind of chronological order, we could assume that Po is like in his hypothetical 20s or equivalent to 20s in human years.
Let's say some time has passed, so he's kind of like more in his 30s, but it still felt like really forced and unnecessary. And then, of course, them sidelining the Furious Five what was stupid, and which just felt like so that they don't have to pay those voice actors anymore. Because Kung Fu Panda 4, if you adjust to inflation, had like half the budget of any of the previous three.
Except we have to have a quick cameo from another annoying voice actor, that being Seth Rogen.
Yeah, and
I go hearing anyways. I haven't seen the movie myself.
And the villain also had a really stupid dilemma, because we're told that she was told that she's too small to be a ninja master, but that makes no sense in a world where Mantis exists.
Yeah.
Oh, what? So Ian mentioned she tried kung fu but couldn't do it, so she engaged in dark magic instead. Well,
so what you said earlier, you said that hypothetically Po is like in his 30s by the time of Kung Fu Panda 4.
Kinda. He's definitely had some time with the Dragon Warrior, so
it
doesn't really give an exact time frame.
So we're kind of on the same page.
And we can assume in general. We might be able to assume that pandas in this universe live longer than pandas in ours, because it is a fantasy world, so they invent whatever rules they want.
Yeah, anthropomorphic animals have equivalent lifespans to that of humans. Even if he was in his 40s, that seems to be too young to be pushing. Oh, you must choose a successor right now, Po.
Because pandas, like most bears, they can live to be over 30, but not much more.
Okay, yeah.
So if he were really in his 30s, they'd be pretty much near death.
There's something that I go generally hearing about Kung Fu Panda 4 that just irks me and kind of makes me fearful to even watch it, is the idea that, or not fearful, hyperbolic language, but whatever, is that Tai Lung has some kind of emotional reconciliation with Po, but not with Shifu.
Yeah, that was there, and it was kind of bullshit because they
And at
kind of
the
like go
end,
into the spirit realm, and yeah, that's why well, actually, I could see that for Tai Long, but not for the other villains.
yeah, I mean, some things that should have changed. Shifu should have had an emotional reconciliation,
Yeah, he's
primarily
barely.
with
Yeah,
Shifu,
Shifu's
not with
barely in the
Poe.
movie. He's just got in there at the beginning.
Wait, just at the wait, Tai Lung. Oh, Shifu was just at the beginning.
Well, at the beginning and the end, like like he's barely in it.
Okay.
It just felt like a cash grab that didn't need to be made.
Indeed. And I go seeing the one clip of where that Shen of all people goes respecting Poe and gives like the Chinese bow to him, and it's all like you have like pretty much Kung Fu Panda Chinese Hitler here giving respect to somebody that he viewed as in the same way that Hitler would view a Jew. Not likely.
No, well, which I really definitely view the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy as like DreamWorks like most perfect set of movies.
Yeah, that's kind of my opinion too. I do not like any of the dragon movies individually better than I like Kung Fu Panda 2. Kung Fu Panda 2, Shrek, and Prince of Egypt are still like my personal top 3 DreamWorks movies. But as an overall package, an overall trilogy, Dragon is definitely a stronger trilogy than Kung Fu Panda is.
Yeah.
That is
Well,
before the
mostly I
fourth
love
one
the
was
fact
made.
that over the course of those 3 movies, you see Hiccup kind of grow from boy to man. He's just a
Yeah.
15-year-old kid at the beginning of the first movie, and by the end of the third movie, you see him as a grown man in his 30s with kids of his own.
Yeah.
It really was a perfect way, and I love that whole they were dragons when I was a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought like if they make How to Train Your Dragon 4, it will really fuck shit up because that was just the perfect conclusion.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda 3 though never really felt it felt a bit tight. It certainly didn't need a Kung Fu Panda 4, but it never felt like a perfect conclusion to the franchise in the same way. So which is
Yeah.
probably why DreamWorks decided to continue it. Hey, we can. They were like, "Hey, we've got to have money."
Indeed. And speaking of money makers, do we want to say any thoughts about Deadpool and Wolverine just yet?
I kind of liked it as a comedy, but it didn't really feel like a movie.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion, roughly too. Like, it was pretty story weak and overly reliant on cameos and nostalgia.
Oh yeah, that's pretty much all it was.
Yeah, even though it was pretty good to see. I mean, in general, it's great to see Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine, but at the same time, was it really necessary? I don't really think so. And I especially got annoyed at the beginning scene of where that Deadpool was digging up his skeleton. I was able to dwindle down some of my annoyance just a little bit, knowing at least that Deadpool is being somewhat self-aware with its with its humor or with what it was doing, so therefore giving it a little bit of a humorous edge. But still, on the other hand, I was like, nah, I can live without this scene in my movie. But ultimately, and honestly, I found Deadpool to be the least likable in this third installment than in the 2 predecessors, personally. I do not know what it is exactly, but just there was just something that set me off as opposed to like the first 2, especially the second one, where I could like find some kind of relatability to him as a character better.
Which is why I definitely would say The Wild Robot was the best movie I've seen in 2024. I can't really think of any movie that really like hit you in the feels nearly as well as The Wild Robot did.
Yeah.
It was made on a budget much smaller than most other DreamWorks movies. $78 million. If you adjust to inflation, it cost a third as much as the first How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
And yet it still has a really beautiful aesthetic, and it still is an incredibly beautiful, heartfelt movie.
Yeah. Had some pretty equivalent like action, really dynamic and like almost roller coaster ride kind of action scenes in the same way of How to Train Your Dragon. How to
Yeah, I
Train Your
love at the
Dragon.
end when like Brightbeard's wings stop working and then she like throws away her power cell in order to give him a place to stay. That was like him. It almost kind of reminded me of the end of the Iron Giant.
Oh yeah. And speaking of like equivalences made to this movie, people liken it a lot to the Iron Giant as well.
Oh, there's definitely similarities, but it also is different enough that it doesn't feel like a ripoff of the Iron Giant.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
The Iron Giant is a lot like it's kind of more like ET, whereas this kind of feels like it's doing something different.
Now that I think about it, it does feel kind of equivalent to ET because mm, I
Yeah,
mean there is like
boy finds an alien that's crash landed and like tries to get him back home, yada yada, and makes friends with him.
yeah, that and also there's like obviously there's like a retrieval entourage sent to try and retrieve Roz the robot in the Wild Robot, but it just did not feel quite as malicious or as um disgusting as the way that they portrayed the people trying to retrieve the robot in the Iron Giant. Or I don't know. I've seen it back at like what was it, 2022 or 2023? Um, hmm. I don't know. I guess it wasn't quite that bad the way that they were trying to retrieve him. I mean, yeah, they shot a nuke which almost like destroyed their own civilization, but did they ever like successfully capture and torture the robot in the Iron Giant?
Well, the Iron Giant's origins are intentionally kept very vague. The closest we get to like hearing about his origins is when the Giant has that dream in the extended cut, and I love the idea that the Giant's dream would broadcast itself and Dean could see it on his TV. That was a really clever idea, which I'm glad that the extended cut got made. That like a lot of that scene to finally be cut into the movie.
Yeah. It's kind of what I noticed about my most recent watch of it because before like 2 years ago, I did not remember that scene being there, but watching it, I was all like, nice addition.
Well, it wasn't originally there. It was added in 2016 for the Blu-ray, the original theatrical cut. They could never finish the scene on time, so it wasn't there. But the Blu-ray has an extended cut that's 2 minutes longer, and 2 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, but they really made the best of it because they had this whole sequence where the Giant dreams, and there's flashes to like his past. You see him with like dozens of others of him destroying some alien world, and then you see an
Yeah.
explosion, you see him fly into space. So you can kind of just, even though you're not given much detail there, you can kind of piece his origin from there that he's some kind of weapon of war from some alien civilization
Yep.
that this kind of come Earth. And in a
Sometimes
mold
less is
similar to
more.
Roz in this, but becomes more than he was programmed to be. I guess because he has his memories wiped, so maybe his programming that taught him to kill was kind of wiped out, and thus new and better programming was added by Hogarth.
Yeah. You know, speaking of five for fighting, like we were talking about off air, Superman.
What's that?
Just at the end of the Wild Robot of where that, or not the Wild Robot, excuse me, the Iron Giant, where he's just all like Superman crashes into the missile. That just choked me up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I was trying to tie into our
Oh yeah,
conversation we
the
had
Iron
off air.
Giant was an amazing movie, which unbelievably was a box office flop when it came out, even though it's a magnificent movie.
Yeah, it's like definitely got some cult classic following nowadays. But what the heck was up with that? Was Warner Brothers just not confident in it, and so therefore they did not market it at all?
Yeah, no, they weren't, and a lot of Warner Brothers they were kind of in a period of transition in the late '90s, where like Turner Animation and Warner Brothers Animation were going through a merger. So a lot of projects that were like under the previous banner kind of were basically ignored and not really cared about. It's the same reason why Cats Don't Dance also flopped around that time.
That was made by Warner Brothers.
Yeah, even though not nearly as good as the Iron Giant, obviously, but kind of a bit of an underrated movie because
Still better than Space Jam.
yeah, it is, yes. Uh, because I don't know. I think the villain of that movie is actually really hilarious. I like the idea, I like the idea of like an evil Shirley Temple as kind of this demented psychopathic villain is actually really damn funny. And
I hate animals, especially that one.
And the end where she tries to sabotage them and only makes their play better. That whole sequence is comedic gold. It is fucking hilarious. No matter
So inventive. You know what?
Oh, how many times I see that, it's still really damn funny.
That ending climax is just about as good as the ending climax for Goofy movie, the first one. You know, speaking of concert endings of where that a bunch of disastrous shenanigans happens, but those disasters actually somehow improve on the concert that takes place at the end of their appropriate movies. You know,
it's good cartoon mayhem. And one thing I actually found out recently but didn't know is, you know how she floods the set of Little Archangel and Noah's Ark movie? That's actually a reference to a 1928 adaptation of Noah's Ark where the studio threw money at it and the set was flooded and three extras drowned to death in the production.
Ooh. Wow.
So I didn't know that when I first saw it, but I found out later that was a reference to a real disaster that happened in old Hollywood.
Yep. Man, in our timeline, it's just a shame. It's just a shame that we exist in a timeline of where that movies like freaking Space Jam and Space Jam 2 become commercial successes, but movies, actually legitimately good movies like Cats Don't Dance and The Iron Giant don't become so commercially successful.
Space Jam 2 actually was not a commercial success.
Really? Oh.
But it could be more due to the pandemic. It didn't make any money.
I'm curious now.
But that's not an excuse because it came out only a few months before Dune. And Dune ended up breaking even at the box office despite the whole pandemic.
Space Jam, A New Legacy. Oh, yeah. It only made $13 million more than its production budget. So it did not make up its marketing budget in the least bit.
Not at all. But it was a pandemic year when it happened, so you can kind of excuse that a little bit.
Well, consider us lucky that it did not become a commercial success, because I can already hear in an alternate timeline of where that we hear like LeBron James Mania.
In Space Jam 3 being put into production.
And many other movie deals made for LeBron James, too.
Yeah, but that won't happen.
Yeah, we don't have to hear the one guy who's all like, oh, this cop that shot this one potential stabber.
Well, like imagine if they they made a sequel to the Wild Robot and they cast LeBron James as like an evil robot that wants to destroy the forest.
Oh, okay. Maybe there is some potential for LeBron James then.
No. But well, let's talk more. Lupita Nyong'o's performance as Roz really was phenomenal. Like, she really does capture. You sounds like the voice of a machine.
Yeah,
but
I mean, there was obviously some voice filter.
Huh?
There was some voice filter, some amount of voice filter used in that, though, right?
I think so. And like I said, she also did the whole the rendition of "What a Wonderful World" for the trailer, and I actually really love that version of "What a Wonderful World." It really is beautiful. Like, I've listened to that trailer multiple times just because I really like her rendition of the song.
Instead of Louis Armstrong being like, "What a wonderful world!"
Hey, don't trash Louis Armstrong. That man was a musical talent of the ages, and his song really is one of the best ever written. I absolutely adore his song, "What a Wonderful World."
Didn't they play that in Finding Nemo?
No, they didn't play it in Finding Nemo. They the one they played in Finding Nemo was like Beyond the Sea, but they did play it in Madagascar. That were the original Madagascar. They do play "What a Wonderful World" there.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting my movies mixed up because maybe it's just some fever dream that I had one time in my childhood where I thought I remembered What a Wonderful World being played in Finding Nemo. And I gave it like a recent rewatch because I'm in the middle of a little bit of a Pixar marathon. Um, and I was like, wait, where's Louis Armstrong? What a Wonderful World.
Yeah, no, that never plays in that movie. But
What is
but
that called? The Mandela effect?
yes.
I'm Mandela affected myself, apparently.
But I thought it actually fit because it sounded a bit robotic. It fit this movie better than just playing the original Louis Armstrong version of the song.
Yeah.
So it's and I think she does have a very good singing voice, particularly when she's like holding the egg and it plays "I hear babies crying, I watch them grow."
Yeah.
It really had a beautiful aesthetic to it.
Yeah. I remember it being musically good. I just I don't know. There's something about it that doesn't make it stick out as memorable as something like How to Train Your Dragon.
But yeah, Louis Armstrong song really it sticks in your brain just due to its really wonderful optimism. What a wonderful world! I see skies of blue, clouds of white, and everything around us is wonderful. It's a song that feels like it was made by someone who appreciates being alive, and the miracle of life.
Can't we all use a little bit more of that?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what all the kids should have played while they were being locked in their houses during the lockdowns of 2020. Is just on repeat Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
Instead of hearing freaking what's his name, it's the end of the world as we know it.
Or that scene where most celebrities are playing Imagine, which is honestly an incredibly pretentious and overrated song.
Imagine.
Which is while a bunch of people are dying, singing a song that says "Imagine there's no heaven" just kind of seems in bad taste.
Yeah. Even the agnostic could agree with me. It pointed the wrong way. Even the agnostic can agree with me on that point. Yeah. Or he's saying the thing that I agree with. That's kind of religiously tinged.
Well, yeah. Whereas like Louis Armstrong's "What a Wonderful World," it's not necessarily a religious song. It's just kind of like appreciating life as it is.
Well, of course,
whether you're religious or not, you can kind of still appreciate the miracle of life.
Yeah.
And this robot kind of also over time learns to really appreciate life and become more than she was programmed to be.
Yeah.
And I also love the whole saying comparing an animal's natural instincts to a robot's programming, because it kind of is very similar.
I do gotta say, I think that this movie did perfectly pace the robot's emotional and mental development better than WALL-E did for any of its robot characters.
Better than WALL-E?
Better than WALL-E.
I don't
know.
That's
my opinion, anyways. I mean,
I love WALL-E as well. You could say that WALL-E's emotional development was more difficult because WALL-E doesn't speak, whereas Roz does.
Yeah. Well, WALL-E starts out at the beginning of the movie having emotions and all that stuff. I was more comparing Roz and the Wild Robot's portrayal of Roz emotionally developing. I was comparing that more to Eve and the other side robots who develop emotions. It just seemed more rushed than Roz from Wild Robot.
Well, though you have to also remember with WALL-E, when we first meet him, he's been doing this for 700 years.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Roz pretty much just wakens up to life at the beginning of the movie when she leaves that capsule, and she's just kind of following her base programming and just kind of exploring the world around her.
But they don't show any of that on any of WALL-E's stuff on screen. But whereas in Wild Robot they did show her on screen, so that makes it more phenomenal to see of how well DreamWorks executed that.
Yeah. Definitely. I'd probably say The Wild Robot. I'd place it on pretty equal level as Wally. I think both are great movies.
Yeah, I mean, at least they did not have as annoying sounding of a villain in Wally.
Hmm.
Irrelevant, Captain. Give me the plant.
Yeah, they kind of based the villain in Wally a lot on HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey, which
Yeah.
I thought was a really genius move.
Which, you know,
It definitely makes more sense that he'd have that aesthetic rather than having a weird personality in as the robot in the Wild Robot did.
making all these comparisons to Wally, though, maybe I was like a bit unkind in my original video review of the Wild Robot, ranking it a 7 out of 10. I think that the Wild Robot might be at least an 8 out of 10, but I wouldn't go any higher
Oh,
than
I'd
that.
give it at least a 9 out of 10. I think it absolutely deserves it.
I would not go any higher than that, mostly because the villain was weak, which is kind of uncharacter-like of DreamWorks, which is known for having a better villain track record than Pixar and modern Disney post 90s. And also there was like some slight story flaws. I mean, definitely there's like a lot of story aspects executed well, but there's a whole lot of story aspects that I just thought were a little bit rushed, too rushed, or just not very well executed, like at all. It's just like a little bit of a mixture of both, in my opinion, in the story front. And plus, Fink was kind of annoying to me.
No, I definitely get. I think 7 out of 10 is a pretty low score for this movie. I think it deserves a lot better.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is that I think I would rank it at least 8 out of 10. I want to upgrade my score.
But I have no reservations of giving it a 9.
All right.
Some minor nitpicks prevent me from giving it a full 10 and calling it quite a. It's close to. It's a great movie, but I say it falls just short of being a masterpiece.
Gotcha.
But it's close enough, and I'd say it's on the same. It's on par with Chris Sanders' better earlier works, on par with Lilo and Stitch, on par with How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan. I'm a fan of both those movies. In fact, I'd probably consider Lilo and Stitch the best Disney animated movie outside of Pixar of the last 30 years. I've always been a fan of it.
Yeah. Giving some rewatches to Pixar movies to compare some more movies. I think I liked Monsters Inc. better than Wild Robot. Monsters Inc. and Toy Story 2 better from a purely personal standpoint. After a recent rewatch of Finding Nemo, I even came to appreciate it more as an adult than as a kid. So I think I like that just a little bit more edged out over that of Wild Robot. It seems like we're kind of running out of stuff to say.
Yeah, maybe, but The Wild Robot, go see it. It deserves your support.
Oh, it definitely does. Let's rack up the box office on this movie so that maybe we can encourage DreamWorks to make more movies like this, even if they give us on the side a Boss Baby 3 for us to like wait in between movies. Actually,
which they will. The DreamWorks hasn't been nothing but consistently inconsistent.
Speaking of DreamWorks movies, before we leave here, actually, what do you think of the prospects of Shrek 5?
Shrek 5. I don't know. Are we gonna hear Shrek saying somehow Farquaad returned?
Oh god. Hopefully not. Hopefully they find some other obscure nursery rhyme villain in the same way of Jack Horner and turn them into some really entertaining, overly megalomaniacal, irredeemable scumbag who's just fun to watch on screen.
Oh, I absolutely love Puss in Boots Jack Horner. I just love what a fucking bastard that character is. It's just It's actually it's amazing. I love that they just don't give a fuck. They don't try to like justify it in any way. They're like, nah, he's just a fucking bastard, you know.
Just get the people who are behind the Last Wish, get them to like help write future movies so that they can like find some obscure nursery rhyme villains and give them a very inventive and fun twist on them in the same way that they did for that.
Yeah, and they can always have the Death Wolf appear in some way. What if like Donkey has a near death experience and in somewhere in the movie and he encounters the Death Wolf? That'd be amazing.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Does it sound like as bad of an idea as a Toy Story 5?
I don't know. When comparing the Shrek franchise and the Toy Story franchise, who had the best third installment is no competition whatsoever. Toy Story 5 by a country mile. Sorry, Toy Story 3 by a country mile.
Well, compared
when you compare the who had the better fourth installment, it's kind of a toss-up.
You know my opinion. I love Shrek Forever After far better than Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4 had some good ideas on paper, just piss poor execution, in my opinion.
I kind of think they're pretty on par, but I might slightly favor Shrek Forever After.
Yeah.
But I guess the story of Shrek 4 left open like adventures you could have in a fifth more than Toy Story 4 did. With them all separated, I don't know how they could possibly like bring them back together without fucking everything up. The previous movies did. Whereas I can easily see how Shrek can continue.
Oh, I guess there was one other thing. Speaking of like, okay, so you go mentioning a Toy Story 5. If they were to bring back Woody, that'd be just a complete undoing of a Toy Story 4's ending.
Yeah.
Before we leave, there was one other thing about the Wild Robot that kind of annoyed me a bit, but I don't know if you want to like convince me of it not being annoying. And that is like the ending battle of the Wild Robot. Like at the end, going towards the end of the movie, they have Vantra, I think is the villain's name, with her squad of guardian robots go out to try and retrieve the Razum robot. And the reason why that they're fighting against it is because, well, Roz does not want to go. But then after they win that battle, she decides to go. It's like, what? You kind of just undid what you were fighting against earlier. Like, what the heck is up with that?
Ultimately, she was fighting to keep her memories, and it was to prevent her memories from being erased was what they were fighting for.
But did they really have any guarantee that their memories weren't going to be erased the second time that she did decide to give herself up?
Maybe not a guarantee, but she knew like what she was facing, and thus knew how she could work around it much more.
I guess that's like another point.
And with her ripping out her power core, she kind of had no choice at that point because she was eventually going to power down without it.
I guess so. You could probably draw some implications of that, and maybe I could too. It's just that it wasn't explicitly said of, I need to go back to whatever mega corporation because I'm not going to last long because I gave up my power core.
Right.
Well, I mean, there was still like some of the world building of where that Roz had like solar power ability, and it's not like that she completely shut down the very moment that she like jacked her own power core out and just threw it aside.
She had an amount of time from it, but she couldn't continue to generate power indefinitely without it. So eventually, she would have powered down.
Are you sure? I mean, there was the solar power that she could have just relied on completely.
Yeah, but then she wouldn't eventually power down at night. You know, she wasn't going to be fully functional without it. She had it for a reason.
Maybe it just things were slightly unclear about that, and just ultimately it felt like an undoing of what they were fighting against earlier. And so that's probably another point as far as the story weakness that makes me unable to rank it higher than an 8 out of 10, just on a purely personal point of view.
Okay, but I still thought the ending worked, particularly when they meet Sprite Bill later. It was a very lovely reunion.
Yeah, the reunion was sweet.
Yeah,
But now I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. Probably
Yeah.
the biggest reason why I was like just being like, was because I was all like, there's something that I wanted to say. It's nagging in my mind.
Yeah, that's
I
why
can't
I was kind
remember
of like, there's some points in this. That's why I greatly prefer a live stream reviewing a movie rather than just like talking in front of a camera. 'Cause there's always like some thought about the movie that I'd like to say, but kind of forget in the moment if it's an unscripted video. Whereas if you're doing a longer live stream talking back and forth, you can forget something in that moment, but it'll come to you later.
maybe somebody else says something that, reminds you of it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I think we'll wind the stream down. Go see the Wild Robot, everybody.
Go see it, everybody. Definitely a recommendation.
All right, have a good one and be more than you were programmed to be.
Indeed. Bye bye, everybody.